Hello, Matt. You are up first, sir.
Hi, how's it going? First time caller.
You are a first-time caller. Yeah, that is pretty good. All right, Matt. So, where are you playing out of, sir?
So I'm in New York City.
Okay.
It is a private game.
All right.
It is a 1-3 match the stack.
Okay.
So it can get pretty deep. It is at 2:30 in the morning when this hand takes place on a weekday, which plays into a little bit. And the one other unique piece, so they call it a rock. It's, I think, different than the rock that you talk about on the show. It's just like a $10 Aria chip. And when you have the rock, it is a $10 automatic straddle under the gun or on the button. And then it goes in the pot. Whoever wins it, then when they're under the gun or on the button, they have the rock in their auto straddle.
So, is the rock only in play if you're gonna be under the gun or on the button?
It's only in play if you have the rock and you are under the gun.
Okay. So it's like a hybrid rock.
Yeah.
So not every hand is straddled then, right?
It's like 20 to 30% of the hands.
Yep.
But they also, like, people will do auto straddle or like sleeper straddles from every position. It's a bigger game than 1-3.
And how deep are you for this hand?
I am 990 effective with the main villain. It is multiway, but that's the stack that comes into play.
Is this in Manhattan?
It is in Manhattan.
Yeah. Well, I always say when people call in with private games in New York, I'm always amazed. Call me a small town guy from Boston because obviously New York City is so big. I mean, I guess there's just multiple games going in each borough, I would assume, right? All the time.
I think there are a bunch. This is the only one I've ever played in.
Okay.
It's run. I mean, the rake is crazy, but it's run pretty effectively, which I like.
All right, nice. All right, so 990 effective.
We're also 10-handed.
Ooh. Okay, 10-handed.
Because they're basically, it's like a must move situation, and there were 2 tables left that each had 5, so they just combined them into 1 table. So I'm on the button with Queen 8 of Hearts.
Is it a straddle?
And I am the straddle, so I'm the auto straddle.
All right, so you're the button, auto straddle, rock, and then it goes in order. Does it go to the small blind first?
Yes.
Okay.
So the small blind limps.
Okay.
The big blind limps.
Okay.
And then we get 3 other field limpers. So 2 middle position limps and the cutoff limps.
Okay.
To me on the button.
And you check?
I do check. I tend to be a little too wide, probably a lot too wide pre-flop, which means that I don't get a lot of folds pre-flop. And I didn't really want to take this. I would have had to open to like 60 or 70. I didn't want to take this for a huge pot this late in the night.
Okay. So $60, you check your button straddle option on the button. Queen of Hearts, 8 of Hearts. Okay.
The flop is 10 of Hearts, 7 of Hearts, 7 of Clubs.
All right. So you flop a flush draw here.
Yep.
Okay. So you flop a flush draw here. Obviously, it's super duper multi-way. You got a little backdoor straightening thing going on here too as well, but it's very, very multi-way. Okay.
So it checks around to me.
Okay.
And I decide to bet $35.
So check to hero bets 35. I wonder, with it being so multi-way, and I remember there's literally 5 people who have limped ahead of this guy, right? The blinds, 3 other limpers. I know it's 10-handed. There's only 3 or 4 other people that haven't entered the pot. I wonder sometimes if I'll just check this back. And the reason why that is because I would be a little bit concerned that somebody might be sandbagging a 7 from up front with all those people in the pot. Now, you can bet as a semi-bluff, I think more short-handed. I just don't know if anyone's going to fold the 10 out anyways. Obviously, you've got equity from that, but it kind of sucks if you were to say, get check raised. So I might do a lot of checking back this multi-way. I don't think it's absolutely terrible to bet, but that's just my thoughts.
I think that makes sense. This game is interesting because it's in Manhattan. At least that's my perspective. There's like some tourists. I'd say tend to be a couple players who are thinking players, and then a lot of just kind of straight up ABC type players. And I think especially with a flush draw on like a wet board like this, I think people with a 7 are probably doing a lot of betting in a limp pot 6 ways, but
they might be going for a check raise from up front. Maybe. Okay. So you bet 35.
The small blind calls, the big blind calls.
Wow.
And then everyone else folds.
So 35 times 3 is 105, pot's 175. That's very interesting. The next to act call from the small blind. I mean, again, obviously it's probably a pretty recreational game, but that should be fairly strong. I mean, he should be folding out probably some of the weaker 10s there. And, when the big blind overcalls and he doesn't fast play off, it's interesting. One of these guys could have a draw, one could have a 10. I suppose the small blind would be the one that might be sandbagging 7x here.
Yeah, I think all that makes sense. Quick reads on the two villains. So the small blind is going to become the real villain. The small blind like knows a lot. I have not seen him before, and I play in the game pretty regularly. He knows a lot of the like other regulars who tend to play late at night, and he showed up at like 2 a.m. on a Thursday.
Okay.
So that's something to keep in mind. And then the big blind I have played with once before doesn't really know what's going on. He's the kind of player who just like shows down his fourth pair at the end of the hand when he loses because he thinks you're supposed to turn over your hand at the end of the hand, like things like that. Like certainly not a thinking player. Not a lot going on.
Okay. All right. So what's the turn?
Turn is the 3 of diamonds.
All right. So the turn's a 3 of diamonds. So you break out. You don't even pick up any additional, any kind of backdoor equity. And I would say at this point, to be perfectly honest with you, if you get checked to you, if it gets checked to you with 2 people in the pot, especially with that next to act call, I'm probably going to check this back. I'm thinking ahead here. Where I might not check it back is if like you had bet and then there was one caller who might have been sort of later on who didn't bet and could be somewhat wide because he didn't bet initially, like a guy to your right, something like that. Although you have to watch out for them sandbagging too. So 10, 7, 7 with 2 hearts, turns to 3 of diamonds here with queen of hearts, 8 of hearts, bets on the button when it's his straddle in a limp pot. Okay. I assume, do they check to you or what?
So the small blind checks. The big blind does not check.
Oh, okay.
Who is the guy that, again, I said isn't a thinking player. He leads for 35 or for 75.
So he leads for 75 here. So check call lead. Wow. I mean, I know your backstory behind this guy is he's kind of clueless because I could tell you what this would mean, in a typical game this size, even with semi-regular players, is that usually a guy is not like playing a stop and go here with like a 10x. He's concerned. It's interesting because usually you would think the big blind might check raise, the small blind call. The pot now is going to be 250, 75 for you to call. Some nits might say this could be a fold because of the fact that the small blind is basically wide open here. He could have a 7 and this looks kind of strong. Also, you could be up against a higher flush draw from one of these guys. I mean, you can't fold the nut flush draw, I don't think ever. Queen 8 of hearts here. I mean, again, you're getting almost 3 to 1 here. Typically, I'm not going to fold in a spot. I'm just making the case that you could make a case here for a fold because of what this check call represents.
I think that makes sense. I also thought even if one of these guys has a 7, I think there's probably some implied odds as long as there's probably reverse implied odds too.
Well, yeah, there's both. Right. There's both. But I mean, your draw's on the front door side, so it's kind of obvious. Like a lot of times you want to be in there. A better situation might have been like if you bet 8, 9 of clubs or something and then picked up like backdoor clubs. Because then if you make the backdoor, you'll get paid off more often because people will be like, oh, we missed the front door. And you can actually represent the front door too. Here, it's just on a 10-7-7 board. If someone's got a 7 and you're calling, you bet the flop and you called the turn donk. And now all of a sudden, like if you blast the river on a heart, yeah, that's going to be hearts a lot.
That makes a ton of sense. I don't think this particular villain in the big blind is like folding a 7 to a medium to small size, even when the flush gets in. But I totally take your point.
Yeah. I mean, you need to make 4 to 1 on this bet. I mean, if you had a flush draw where all your outs were good, you would need to make basically 4 to 1. You have 1 chance in 5 of making this. So it's kind of easy math. You just multiply the odds times the bet size, which would be 75 times 4 is 300. You're already making 250 from the pot right now, meaning because he bet 75 into 170, so the pot's 250 at 75 for you to call. So it's not hard to make that up, but we've got all these other things going on. We also have another guy in the pot that could be raising turn. We could be overflushed here with an overflush draw, and sometimes our outs might not be good if we make it. That's the case sometimes here for folding, but big blind leads for 75. I assume you call.
I do call, and the small blind calls behind.
Oh, see, this is concerning to me in the sense that the small blind playing like this is concerning to me in the sense that if the small blind is any type of player, I don't think you sort of gave any type of backstory about the small blind. I mean, I think he should be folding out 10x here. Now, maybe some guys in a home game might not, but I think it's optimistic that we think he's got 10x. So what does that leave? It leaves like a higher draw. I mean, I suppose you could have like something like Jack 9 of hearts, which might be a lower draw, which might be a combo. I guess there's a couple of that, but higher draws, and like some sort of hand that he thinks is like the invulnerable nuts. Like he flopped 10-7 suited. He was slow playing something like 7-3. I mean, he had to voluntarily enter the small blind, but a lot of people play that way too wide, like quad sevens. You know, this is why it's a little bit concerning here when he calls behind.
Yep, makes sense.
So 225 here in on the turn, and it looks like the pot's just like straight $400. Okay.
The river is the ace of hearts.
All right. Well, so you make your front door flush. That makes me feel a little bit better about the hand. And the reason why it makes me feel a little bit better about the hand is the small blind or one of these guys can't have the nut flush draw, which is usually it's going to be the combination of flush that somebody voluntarily enters the pot with, like ace X, right? Well, now that someone can't have ace X of hearts, now you have the second nut flush. And it's just, it's just way less likely someone's playing like king deuce suited from up front, whereas they would play ace deuce suited from up front. With that being said, if someone has a 7 and they've entered the pot from up front, the logical hands that somebody plays a 7 with are like 6-7 and like ace 7. So it kind of goes a little bit both ways. I would look back at the suit of the ace and the 7. It looks like they're going to be 2 full combinations of ace 7 of diamonds and ace 7 of spades that are available. Sometimes there's just one. So I think it works a little bit in your favor, more so than the ace 7 I'm worried about. So it's probably the best. Well, it's close. I mean, it's nice that it's the ace of hearts, I guess is what I would say.
Do you think the small blind or big blind is more likely to have ace 7? Do you think that ever raises either my flop bet or the big blind's turn bet?
Well, I would have thought that one of these guys, so, you would think that the small blind, if he had ace 7, would raise at some point, right? Like he was the guy that I sort of tagged as having the draw. Now, the big blind just overcalled the flop, but some guys will sort of do that, like waiting for a safe card. And again, it's weird because these guys are in the blinds and you button straddled, which means that they really shouldn't be playing that wide, but somehow people do. Like it's so ridiculous. This is how you see this weird like live paradox where like a guy would never play a certain hand in the small blind or in the big blind in a certain situation that wasn't button straddled. But now, all of a sudden, now that it's button straddled, they complete for like 7 more when they're in the absolute worst position. It makes absolutely no sense, but they might be in there. So I don't know how these guys adjust to it. You should be playing tighter in reality in that type of situation because you're first to act. So I would have thought, but maybe the big blind is playing stop and go with ace 7. Now, if he gets checked to me, I'm certainly going to bet for sure.
So it does get checked to me.
Okay. So, I mean, you're 990 effective. I mean, this is the beauty sometimes of live poker. There aren't enough people. Like, I look at these types of situations at the smaller stakes of live poker as almost free roll bets. Meaning, like, I'm not concerned about opening the betting action back up by making a thin value bet. I don't even know if this is all that thin. Because the frequency of people like check raise river bluffing here is so infrequent, especially like multiway, that you just can't give up the value that you would get by betting. You cannot be scared of getting raised here. Most of the time, if you bet and then you get raised, especially, actually, it's debatable which raise would be stronger, whether it be the small blind or the big blind. Most of the time, you usually can fold, especially when you're losing to boats. But the point is that a lot of people will be like, well, I can't bet here because what if somebody raises me? That's a big problem. Now, with that being said, if you're incapable of betting and folding, then you probably should check back. That's why I always tell my students, because then you're going to lose more when you're beaten. But for the most part, you don't want to be scared at the end here on these rivers.
Yeah, I thought this was a slam dunk bet for value to try to get called by a 7. And like I said, I thought even though it's the front door, I thought a 7 probably could get away with a value bet and they would call. So I bet 275.
So you bet 275. So Hero bets 275. I just want to take a look. So you went to the river. You went to the river with 110, like something like 770 or so, starting the river with like 770 in your stack.
I think it's like 870.
870, you're right. 870. So you bet 275. I mean, I was just thinking about like how much I would want to bet that wouldn't commit myself to get called here by like a 7. Like if you went something like 350, you still have over 500 left. Like if you went 350 and a guy jammed on you, I guess the pot would be what, 2,000, something like 500 to call. Those would be pretty enticing kinds of pot odds. So sometimes you actually, in a spot like this, you go a little bit smaller to kind of leave yourself an escape hatch, I guess is what we talk about.
So the two stacks are pretty different. And I didn't really think about targeting one player versus the other with my size. But the small blind stack is the effective stack that we talked about. So he has 870 in his stack. The big blind has less, probably starts the river with like 500, I would guess.
You're talking about effective at the river, right?
Yes, correct.
All right. So you bet 275. Okay.
I bet 275. The small blind jams for 870.
All right. So small blind jams for 870 total. Yep.
The big blind thinks and folds.
Okay. Well, I was going to say if the big blind calls, then. Well, so, it's interesting because sometimes like the big blind, if he's so bad that he's going to call with a 7 anyways, just a naked 7, it could put you in a difficult little spot, but usually you can't overcall. So big blind thinks and folds. And now you're in a situation where 675 plus what? 675 plus 900 is like 1575, like 1545 in the pot. What, about 600 to call? Something like that?
A little less than 3-1.
1545, 600 to call. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, whenever you're in this type of situation here, the very first thing that I look at when I have a very strong but non-nut hand and somebody makes an aggressive play at me is, could my opponent be overvaluing something that's worse than me? I've got the queen high flush. The nut flush is the king high flush. There's boats out there. I just don't know the way that you've played it. If a guy check jams with a jack high flush here, I mean, he would have to really be out to lunch. So I'm going to tend to discount that. Plus, you have queen 8 of hearts, so he can only really have jack 9 of hearts, which would have been a combo draw. I'm not saying that he would have played it off, but there's only a couple combos. You can't have 10x of hearts. Again, you have the 8, so like 9, 6. There's just not that many hands. Like really, like if you legit just be like jack 9, right? Because you can't have jack 8. You have the 8, jack 6. You know what I'm saying? So I just don't see that. So it just comes down to you lose to the king high flush. I don't think he can be overvaluing something. So if he's not overvaluing something, then you kind of just have a bluff catcher in this particular spot. And I mean, some guys might not even check jam like the king high flush here in this particular spot. But he called next to act. Again, he could have had something really, really thick. Who knows? Like, I mean, could he even have like limped him with like pocket 10s? I don't know if people start like limp re-raising for, I mean, I sometimes talk about like at a 10-handed table, you would actually start to think about in a button straddle type of situation about limping the number 1 slot and developing like a limp re-raise range and stuff like that some of the time, although the 1 it's such a small piece of the straddle. But
I thought about whether 10s and aces even go.
Oh yeah, aces too. Aces too, yeah. That's interesting.
Goes for a limp re-raise.
Yeah.
I mean, it's certainly possible. My thinking was that with like in a 10-handed game, maybe that means it's more likely that someone raises and you're going to be able to put in a big 3-bet pre-flop. But I feel like my read was this player, I guess not based on a ton since I hadn't played with him a lot. I didn't think he was the type to limp 3-bet those kinds of strong premiums.
I mean, listen, I'm going to tell you in a regular casino game, like if I was playing my game at Encore, let's say it was like 2-5, right? Which is a good sweet spot. Unless the guy is probably like entirely unknown to me, if he was semi-regular, I don't think I call here, given the pot odds. I think this is probably a fold. And again, it comes back to when you work the combos out, if he's not overvaluing anything that's better than my hand, and I just see it's just really unlikely. because you have the 8 of hearts and the queen. So again, from that one hole, like it would literally only be jack 9 of hearts. And that's just one specific combo. Now, I don't know how, like, is he playing king jack of hearts for a limp? You've got the queen of hearts in your hand. So king 9 of hearts, but then other boats. I don't know if you're good here 1 out of 2.5, 1 out of 3.5 times, right?
So I agree with you. I don't think any flush, including the king high flush, is doing this. I felt like it was boats or something that or air basically. And I was trying to think through the boats that he has. He also can have quads.
Well, but even if it is just boats and not the king high flush, though, what air does he have? Because remember, look, you bet the flop he called next to act the big blind call, right? Then the turn he checked, the big blind led, you called and he overcalled. So what air can he possibly have? It's multiway.
I won't say that I thought about this in the moment because I didn't, but I think 8-9 makes sense.
Well,
I block it.
It's a speculative call on the turn for sure. And it just seems like you have so many flushes here. And there's a possible, I mean, sure, I guess it's possible. Yes, you block some of it. And also the fact that, like, a lot of times somebody in this hand has a really strong hand. Like, he can't expect you to fold the flush here. Most people in a New York City private home game wouldn't fold the flush. So maybe, I mean, it's possible. I'm just telling you, most likely I lean towards fold in the casino game. What did you end up doing here?
I did end up putting in the call. I couldn't convince myself that there were a lot of boats that made sense. Kind of what we talked about before. I think he's probably raising a7 at some point, either on the flop or on the turn, and not just check calling both of those. I thought if he shows me 7-7, so be it. And 10-7, the two combos of 10-7 made sense. 10-7 suited. I didn't think like pocket threes or 7-3 made a whole lot of sense. So I did end up calling. He mucks and says you're good.
Oh, really? Did you ever find out what he just mucked?
I did. So he did have 8-9, and the big blind had a 7 that he folded on the river.
Wow.
That was the other thing that kind of I wasn't thinking he has 8-9. I'm gonna call with a bluff catcher. That wasn't in my head. What was in my head was I thought the big blind had a 7 a lot of the time,
which cuts down on the guy's boats, right?
Right.
A lot.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if you think what the caller is basically saying, which is logical, you might be lean towards the call if you think two things, and they both have to be together: that he wouldn't jam a king high flush, and that you think that there's a strong possibility that the big blind had a 7. And of course, that means because the small blind is only jamming boats, and if the big blind has a 7, it's just less likely. Working against you is you have an 8, and it seems like absolute suicide to bluff in this particular spot. But I love limp pots anyways. Thank you very much for the call. I appreciate it.